There was a time when the opioid crisis was blamed mostly on prescription painkiller abuse, but new data is suggesting that opioid deaths in America are now largely due to an illegal synthetic form of the drug smuggled into the U.S. And here's One America's John Hines in Washington.
Even with all the federal and state enforcement efforts to clamp down on prescription painkillers, opioid overdoses have increased. Now conservatives are speaking out, calling the opioid crisis a national security problem and a trade issue with both China and Mexico.
We obviously didn't understand the problem, and so we're now punishing doctors and nurses and pharmaceutical companies for a problem they didn't create. And then we're going to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, good, we're doing something. And then next year we'll look at the stats and go, oh my gosh, it's getting worse. So it's time to wake up, understand what the problem is.
That from George Landreth, president of the conservative Frontiers of Freedom. And the problem, according to the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, is that deaths involving synthetic opioids have risen sharply, while deaths from prescription opioids have fallen. A study by American Action Forum supported the CDC's conclusions that synthetic opioids are responsible for essentially all of the rise in opioid-related deaths. And synthetic opioids come almost exclusively from China and Mexico.
It was the Chinese and the Mexicans who were bringing in fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid, which is relatively inexpensive to make. Just 4 grains of it can be a lethal dose, like grains the size of a salt grain. So as a result of that, it's easy to transport. In fact, the number one way it's smuggled into the United States is through the U.S. Postal Service. But the secondary way is across the border from Mexican drug cartels.
And it's a problem that has not escaped the attention of the White House. It's been cited by the president in connection with increased tariffs on China that the president is trying to use as leverage to change China's behavior, says Landreth.
I think the president is right to point out it's China. They need to think them exporting drug dependency is a good, for their perspective, is, oh, that's a good thing. We make money and we screw other countries. But he's going to have to make it clear to them that will not fly. And I think he's working. Yes, President Trump is doing that. I think you'll see that both on a national security level, and I think you'll see that on a trade level. Part of those negotiations is going to be, you all, from President Trump and his administration, is you are going to have to stop this, China.
The National Institute for Health, or NIH, says that synthetic opioids, including fentanyl, are now the most common drugs involved in drug overdose deaths in the U.S. John Hines, One America News, Washington.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.